here's dispute over Biden's rejection of the Trump-era public charge immigration rule. An Arizona-led group of red states asking the justices to allow them to defend that rule in federal court, even though the Biden administration has abandoned it. For more details on all of this, let's turn to somebody who knows all about it. That would be Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich, who joins us on the phone. Mr. Attorney General, great to have you back with us.
Thank you, Vince, for having me on again.
Tell us more about this case today, what it's really about, and how you think you fared in the Supreme Court.
Well, Vince, let me just begin by saying this, is I do feel like I brought a little bit of that Arizona sunshine to Washington, D.C., because wasn't it a glorious afternoon? And so I was able to argue at the U.S. Supreme Court today on the public charge rule. And this is the common sense immigration policy rule that the Trump administration promulgated that basically assures that emergency assistance programs are available to American taxpayers when they need them most. What it does is it requires that people that are non-citizens cannot be dependent on government benefits like Section 8 housing or food stamps for more than 1 year of their first 3 years here. The Biden administration basically did a strategic surrender after the U.S. Supreme Court accepted certiorari on the case. They went ahead and dismissed a bunch of appeals, and then they basically colluded with the plaintiffs to allow a district court decision in Illinois become permanent, and they use that as a basis then to withdraw the rule, thereby eviscerating the Administrative Procedures Act. So they were sneaky, underhanded, they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and so I led a coalition of states suing, saying that the states had a right to intervene in that case because it affected us financially.
I mean, is this just based on rules that are being decided by respective presidents, or is there an underlying law here that prevents people from becoming, dependent on federal taxpayer or state taxpayer dollars if they're going to immigrate to the United States?
The public charge requirement is a bedrock principle in our immigration system.
Right.
It's the principle. The statute's been around for more than 100 years that basically says people have to be financially self-sufficient to gain admission or gain status in the United States when they're non-citizens. So different administrations have interpreted that a different way. President Trump interpreted it, as they said, in a way that basically says you can't be on welfare or government benefits for more than 1 year of your first 3 years here. And so we think that's a common sense approach. We want to make sure, and Vince, I think I've mentioned this before on your show, I'm a first-generation American. My parents lived through World War II. They lived through communism. And it was not lost on me today how important immigration is to this country, but you have to have an orderly process. And we are a land of immigrants, and we don't want to become the land of the welfare state. And as I was walking through the Supreme Court today before the argument, I remember being a high school kid and coming here and seeing the Supreme Court and being in such awe. And right before I started my argument, I got this wry smile on my face, and I thought to myself, this is amazing. A first-generation American public school kid literally sued the Biden administration, sued the President of the United States, and now I'm arguing that court, sparring with 9 justices on the Supreme Court. Only in America can that happen, and it's important because the rule of law means something, and that's why people ultimately want to come to this country. So we have to, no matter if it's a Republican or Democratic administration, they don't get to literally strategically surrender or undermine the law.
Right. A functional immigration system is supposed to exist as a mutual benefit to both the immigrant and the country that welcomes that immigrant. So, in other words, yes, we should as a country think to ourselves, okay, what immigrants would improve our country, and then welcome them in. And then immigrants who meet those standards should be allowed to immigrate. I don't think this shouldn't be a partisan point. That seems like a very common sense one.
Yeah, and I don't know when it became partisan, because at the end of the day, there was a time that, even the Democrats, going back to the Johnson administration, understood that, mass migration had an impact on wages and standard of living. This has nothing to do with illegal immigration per se. It has everything to do with having an orderly system where you don't have what's happened now, where the cartels have essentially seized operational control of our southern border. The price of fentanyl is dramatically falling. The price of methamphetamine is falling. We're seeing crime rates rise and escalate as the cartels gain southern control of our border. And literally in the last year, you had more than 2 million people illegally enter the country. And that's like, more than Biden's home state of Delaware in 1 year. I mean, so this is overwhelming the system, and we want to make sure that hardworking American taxpayers that have paid into the system, that have played by the rules, that those, programs are that they need them in times of crisis, in times of emergency. And I think we all know, God knows, that what's going on right now with the Biden administration, we're seeing gas prices rise, milk prices rise. Anybody that's worried about saving for their kids' future college, I mean, everything is going through the roof. And so, we need to make sure that these emergency programs are there for people that paid into them and have played by the rules.
Let's talk more about the illegal immigration problem we have. Obviously, the Biden administration is doing nothing to arrest the rise of illegal immigration that's occurring in our country, and of course the corresponding drug crisis that we have. You have joined with 13 other Republican attorneys general to call for the resignation of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. This is an unusually, I would say, strongly worded letter here demanding Mayorkas' resignation. I'd be shocked if he actually, accedes to your demands here, but characterize why he should go.
Because the crisis on our southern border is a man-made catastrophe. Forget about global warming. This is a crisis that was created by President Biden, Vice President Harris, and Secretary Mayorkas. And frankly, and I say this, I don't like to say this, but the reality is that Secretary Mayorkas is the least competent of all the Biden cabinet officials, and that says a lot because we see a lot of incompetence at the Biden administration. And so you have someone that literally over the past year has allowed the cartels to see operational control of our southern border. We see the price of fentanyl falling dramatically. We see a dramatic increase in the amount of drugs coming into our country. We're seeing overdose and fentanyl deaths skyrocket. I know just in Arizona last year, the DEA seized more than 9 million fentanyl pills, enough fentanyl to kill a entire state population. And the problem, Vince, is this is not staying in Arizona. It's not staying in Texas. The Biden administration is literally, putting people that have entered the country illegally onto airplanes and shipping them out all over the country. They're putting them up in hotels at taxpayer expense. And so the Biden administration has essentially decriminalized and incentivized this crisis that's affected us. And no one represents that more than Secretary Mayorkas. And I don't know if it's because it's incompetence or if it's a dereliction of duty or, and I hate to use those terms, but the reality is Americans are dying and our cities are less safe as a result of the failure of Mayorkas.
I'm going to read through some of this language here, Attorney General Brnovich. So again, you 14 Republican attorneys general signing on to this letter today. They say, we, the attorneys general of 14 states, right to demand your immediate resignation. They say that Mayorkas has purposely taken repeated actions impairing the safety and security of Americans as you publicly boast about your abject refusal to enforce the laws enacted by Congress to keep us safe. Our southwest border is a disaster, and our nation is on the verge of a national security crisis. Some of our states lie on that southwest border and live with your catastrophic actions daily. Others of us have traveled to the southwest border and witnessed firsthand your utter malfeasance as secretary. The effects of your dismal leadership at DHS are felt in each of our states. The rest of this letter is no less scathing. And Attorney General Brnovich, I see here some numbers that you included, that the number of sex offenders arrested entering our country has increased by an astounding 213% over the last fiscal year. Additionally, deportations have fallen a staggering 70% since 2020. When you look at these numbers, you think to yourself, how could this be anything but intentional?
And that's the thing, Vince, is, we have a lawsuit right now regarding the interim guidance and the permanent guidance. The Biden administration and Secretary Mayorkas will not actively deport people with deportation orders. And, it's in the U.S. Code. It's in Title 8 that says they shall be deported within 90 days. So these are people that have gone through the process And there's more than 1 million in the country. And I know when we deposed the interim director of ICE in Arizona, he said, yeah, this is going to make our communities less dangerous because ICE is not picking up people that have either been charged or convicted of serious crimes like sex offenses and arson and property crimes. And so our communities clearly are a less safe place as a result of the intentional or malfeasance or, whatever adjective you want to use of the Biden administration and Secretary Mayorkas, period. And I will tell you what, if Secretary Mayorkas doesn't step down, we know that how demoralized law enforcement is, we know how unsafe our communities are becoming, then, my goodness, Congress should do its job and impeach him.
It's just remarkable that we're here. Also, the drug crisis is out of control. Last time you and I spoke, you stunned me with some of the street value of things like fentanyl and how much it has dropped, which is a real sign that the supply of this very deadly drug has exploded in the United States. What, if anything, is the latest on the prevalence of this deadly fentanyl in the United States and its relationship to this border crisis?
Well, we know that all drugs have dramatically increased. In the number of legal drugs flowing into our country are dramatically increased. We know that the amount of fentanyl, amount of methamphetamine, even cocaine is increasing. And I think I did mention this last time that the street price for a pill of fentanyl just a year ago was about $20 a pill in Arizona, and now it's down to about $4 or $5. And that's because the supply is so dramatically increased. And so we see those numbers, and then you start to lose track of this stuff, Vince. Last year, 100,000 Americans, died as a result of, fentanyl and opioid-related overdoses. These numbers are staggering. That's somebody's son, daughter, niece, nephew. And then when you lay over that, the fact that the cartels are making so much money off of this and they're becoming more powerful and they're going to become more violent, maybe even destabilizing, the government of Mexico. These are serious, not only a problem that's going to last for another year or 2 years, these are problems now that are generational. And like this, then you start talking about people at the terror watch list apprehended and the number of the tens of thousands of gotaways, people that aren't surrendering, that are trying to evade capture and detection, and you wonder what they're up to. This is really, folks sometimes back east don't appreciate how dangerous this crisis is and how it may be in Arizona's backyard now or even Texas' backyard, but it's coming to Manassas, Virginia. It's coming to Norfolk. It's coming to Maryland. This will affect every one of our neighborhoods, and the longer we ignore the problem and the longer we allow Secretary Mayorkas to fail at his job, the more dangerous our country is becoming.
Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich, having just argued before the United States Supreme Court today and calling for the resignation of DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas alongside 13 other Republican attorneys general across the country. Thank you, sir, as always, for stopping by and telling us all about it.
Thanks, Vince. Have a good one.
All right, it's 5:20.